Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you're part of our journey. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and get ready for a story that will leave you thinking. And if you love inspiring tales, a like goes a long way. Let me see what's in your bag, sweetheart. His words sliced through the night air, freezing her in place. 3 other shadows moved closer, their laughter echoing off the empty park benches. Sarah clutched her phone tighter, suddenly aware of how alone she was. The shortcut through Jefferson Park had never felt so dangerous before. Streetlights cast long shadows across the cracked pavement as the tallest man stepped forward. Designer watch glinting, alcohol on his breath, entitlement in every movement. His friends formed a half circle, cutting off her escape route. Around them, the park stood empty. No joggers, no dog walkers, just the distant sound of traffic beyond the trees. Sarah's heartbeat drummed in her ears as she calculated impossible odds. "I'm just trying to get home," she managed, voice steadier than her trembling hands. The group leader smirked, enjoying her fear. He reached for her bag, fingers grazing her arm. That's when everyone heard it. Footsteps, unhurried yet deliberate, crunching on the gravel path behind them. A figure emerged from the darkness, baseball cap pulled low, but there was something familiar about the way he moved. Something that made the group hesitate, if only for a moment. If this moment made you feel something, imagine what's coming next. Hit that like button and stay with us. Subscribe now. Sarah's mind raced through self-defense classes she'd taken last summer. Palm heel strike to the nose, keys between fingers, scream for help. But the cold reality of 4 against 1 paralyzed her. The leader, she'd noticed his friends call him Trent, had the overconfident swagger of someone who'd never faced consequences. "Maybe we can help you get home," Trent said, his smile never reaching his eyes. "For a price," his friends chuckled, moving closer. One of them recording with his phone as if her fear was entertainment. The approaching figure paused at the edge of the light. He wore simple workout clothes, dark joggers, a plain black hoodie. Nothing remarkable except for something in his stance, a quiet confidence that seemed to alter the energy of the space around him. He removed his cap, and Sarah caught a glimpse of shoulder-length dark hair and a beard that couldn't quite hide his features. "Everything okay here?" The man's voice was gentle, almost soft, but carried an unmistakable weight. There was something about it, familiar yet unexpected in this context, that made Sarah's breath catch in her throat. Trent turned, irritation flashing across his face at the interruption. "Mind your own business, man," Trent said, sizing up the newcomer. "Just having a friendly conversation with the lady." "Doesn't look friendly to me," the man replied, stepping fully into the light. A flicker of recognition passed through the group. The one filming lowered his phone slightly, mouth parting in surprise. "Holy shit," he whispered. "That's Keanu Reeves," Trent finished, his tone shifting instantly. The aggression remained, but now mixed with something else. The complex calculation of someone whose planned victimization had collided with unexpected celebrity. "Didn't know the Matrix was filming in our park tonight." Sarah stared, disbelief momentarily overshadowing her fear. Keanu Reeves. Here. Now the absurdity of it struck her even as relief flooded through her system. The actor moved with measured steps, positioning himself subtly between Sarah and the group. "I think the lady wants to go home," Keanu said quietly. There was no confrontational stance, no raised voice, just a presence that seemed to expand in the space, a gravity that shifted the balance of power. Trent glanced at his friends, seeking confirmation that this bizarre interruption was actually happening. The friend with the phone had fully committed to recording now, his earlier harassment forgotten in the thrill of capturing viral content. "Yo, it's actually him. John Wick in the flesh." "You a fan?" Keanu asked, his focus never leaving Trent, who stood frozen in the conflicting impulses of backing down and saving face. "We're all fans," Trent said, attempting to regain control of the situation. "Just having some fun. No need for Hollywood to get involved." He forced a laugh that none of his friends joined. Sarah felt Keanu's hand gently touch her elbow, a silent question. She moved closer to him, away from Trent's reach. The simple movement spoke volumes, a choice made, sides drawn. The park had become a stage, and everyone present knew their roles had suddenly been rewritten. "I was just heading out," Keanu said, his voice still measured. "I can walk with you." The offer was directed at Sarah, but his eyes remained on the group, steady and unblinking. It wasn't a request for their permission, but a statement of what would happen next. The night air crackled with tension. Trent's jaw clenched as he calculated his options. His friends shifted uncomfortably, the dynamic changed by the unexpected witness. Not just any witness, but one whose presence had transformed their anonymous harassment into a public spectacle. Things are about to take a turn. Don't miss what happens next. Subscribe, like our video, and keep watching. "Yeah, sure, whatever," Trent said, attempting casual dismissal while struggling to maintain his composure. "But you know, not everyone gets special treatment just because they're famous." He stepped closer to Keanu, alcohol emboldening him despite the warning glances from his friends. "Some of us live in the real world, not make-believe movies." Phones emerged from all members of the group now, recording the confrontation. Sarah could almost see the social media captions forming in their minds. "Confronted Keanu Reeves tonight," twisting the narrative to make themselves the protagonists. "The real world," Keanu repeated softly. "Tell me about your real world." There was no mockery in his voice, just a genuine inquiry that seemed to catch Trent off guard. "My real world?" Trent's laugh was sharp. "My real world is working 60 hours a week while rich celebrities play pretend for millions. My real world is watching guys like you get everything handed to you." The park had grown quieter, as if the night itself was holding its breath. Sarah noticed how Keanu stood, relaxed yet perfectly balanced, no wasted movement. The same presence that made him command attention on screen was now focused entirely on diffusing the volatile energy before him. "I understand frustration," Keanu said, "but taking it out on someone who's just trying to get home safely, that's not about the real world, that's about power." Trent's face flushed. "You don't know anything about me." "I know you had a choice tonight," Keanu replied. "We all make choices. Every day." His words carried the weight of someone who had seen both sides of life, tremendous success and profound loss. Right now, you're choosing what kind of man you want to be. One of Trent's friends lowered his phone, the glamour of the confrontation fading as uncomfortable truth settled in. Another shifted his weight, glancing at the park exit. The collective energy of the group was fracturing under Keanu's steady gaze and measured words. "So what? You're going to give us life advice now?" Trent scoffed, but his voice had lost its edge. "Save it for your interviews." "Not advice," Keanu shook his head. "Just an observation. There's still time to make a different choice." Sarah watched this exchange in stunned silence. The confrontation had transformed into something else entirely. Not a battle of physical strength, but a quiet dismantling of false bravado. Keanu wasn't fighting Trent. He was offering him a way back to dignity. A small crowd had begun to gather at the edges of the scene. Late-night dog walkers, a couple returning from dinner, teenagers on bikes. Witnesses to this surreal moment where Hollywood and reality blurred into something unexpected. Trent noticed them too, awareness dawning that his actions were now being judged by more than just his friends. "You think you're better than me?" Trent's question hung in the air, vulnerability breaking through his hostility. "Because you've got money and fame." Keanu's response was immediate and sincere. I don't think I'm better than anyone." He gestured toward Sarah. "But I do think she deserves to walk home without feeling threatened." The truth of this statement settled heavily in the space between them. One of Trent's friends, the youngest of the group, put his hand on Trent's shoulder. "Come on, man. Let's just go." Trent shrugged him off. "You're taking his side now." "There aren't sides here," Keanu said quietly. "Just people trying to figure out the right thing to do." The crowd of onlookers had grown, their presence creating a circle of witness around the confrontation. Some had recognized Keanu. Others were simply drawn to the tension. Phones recorded from every angle, capturing this unexpected moment of truth in a city park after dark. Sarah felt a strange calm descend as she watched the dynamics shift. What had begun as terrifying isolation had transformed into something else, a public reckoning with everyday cruelty. Keanu stood beside her not as John Wick or Neo, but as someone who had simply chosen not to walk past suffering when he saw it. Trent looked around, becoming acutely aware of how the narrative had changed. He was no longer the powerful one controlling the situation. He was the antagonist in a story being documented in real time, his choices exposed under the unflinching light of public scrutiny, and an unexpected moral clarity brought by a passing celebrity. This story is only getting deeper. What would you do in this situation? Comment below, and let's talk. You know what? Fine. Trent raised his hands in mock surrender, attempting to reclaim some control through performative compliance. "We were just having fun. If the lady can't take a joke, that's not on us." He looked around at his friends and the growing audience, playing to the cameras. Everyone's so sensitive these days. A woman in the crowd called out, "It wasn't a joke. We saw what you were doing." Others nodded, the collective witness becoming its own power. The moment had grown beyond the immediate confrontation. It had become a referendum on behavior that usually happened in shadows, protected by the silence of bystanders. Keanu didn't raise his voice when he replied, but somehow it carried to everyone present. Harassment isn't a joke. Fear isn't a punchline. Trent's face contorted between anger and embarrassment. "Easy for you to judge from your mansion. You don't know what real life is like." "I don't know your specific struggles," Keanu acknowledged, "but pain isn't exclusive to any one person. Neither is the choice to be kind." The simplicity of this statement landed with unexpected weight. Someone in the crowd clapped, then another joined in. Not applause for a celebrity, but affirmation of a truth too often forgotten. Trent looked around, realizing he'd lost not just control of the situation, but the narrative itself. His friends had stepped back, creating physical distance between themselves and what was quickly becoming a public humiliation. "You don't get it," Trent said, desperation creeping into his voice. "Everyone's recording this. You've just ruined my life because you wanted to play hero." "No one's ruined your life," Keanu replied. "What's being recorded is a moment where you get to decide who you are. That's not a ruined life. That's an opportunity." Sarah watched as something shifted in Trent's expression, a crack in the armor of entitlement and anger. For a brief moment, beneath the bravado, she glimpsed someone wrestling with their own choices, seeing themselves through others' eyes perhaps for the first time. "I'm sorry," Trent said suddenly, the words sounding foreign on his tongue. He looked at Sarah directly. "I'm sorry we scared you." The apology was awkward, possibly motivated more by public pressure than genuine remorse, But it was a beginning, a small crack in the foundation of behavior that had likely gone unchallenged for years. A strange silence fell over the gathered crowd. This wasn't the climactic confrontation they had expected, not the John Wick moment their phones had been poised to capture. Instead, they were witnessing something more subtle and perhaps more powerful, the quiet beginning of change. "Thank you," Keanu said simply, acknowledging the difficulty of that apology without dismissing the harm that had preceded it. That takes courage. Trent's youngest friend stepped forward. "We should go," he said quietly, no longer performing for the cameras. "This got out of hand." The others nodded, their earlier pack mentality dissolved under the clear light of public scrutiny. "Wait," Sarah said, finding her voice at last. Everyone turned to her, surprised. "I want to say something." She stepped forward, shaking slightly but determined. "What happened tonight happens every day to women who don't have a celebrity walk by at the right moment. Remember that when you watch your videos later." Her words hung in the air, simple and devastatingly true. Several people in the crowd murmured in agreement. Others looked down, perhaps reflecting on times they had looked away from similar situations. Keanu nodded at her words, a gesture of respect rather than approval. This was her moment, her voice reclaiming power that had been taken from her minutes earlier. Trent looked at Sarah, then at Keanu, then at the crowd of witnesses with their phones still recording. Whatever calculation he was making behind his eyes remained private, but he finally nodded. "Let's go," he said to his friends, the bravado gone from his voice. As the group began to disperse, the tension in the air slowly dissipated. The audience, denied their viral confrontation video but given something more meaningful instead, gradually returned to their evening routes. Some approached Keanu for quick photos, which he graciously accommodated, but his focus remained on Sarah, ensuring that the resolution of the crowd didn't leave her vulnerable once again. "It's not over yet. The best part is coming. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it." "Are you all right?" Keanu asked when they finally had a moment of relative privacy, his voice genuine with concern. Sarah nodded, the adrenaline of the confrontation beginning to ebb. "I think so. Thank you for stopping." The simplicity of her gratitude belied the enormity of what his intervention had meant. "I'm headed this way if you still want company for your walk," he offered, gesturing toward the park's eastern exit. No autograph request, no expectation of adoration, just the same quiet offer of safety he'd made before anyone had recognized him. They walked in companionable silence for a moment, the park around them returning to its nighttime rhythm. A few onlookers still followed at a respectful distance, phones occasionally flashing as they captured the unlikely pair making their way along the illuminated path. "Does this happen to you a lot?" Sarah finally asked. "Getting involved in random situations?" A small smile crossed Keanu's face. "More often than makes it to social media." He paused, considering. "The world's full of moments where we have to decide whether to walk past or stop. Tonight wasn't about me. But it would have been different if you weren't you," Sarah said, gesturing vaguely at his famous face. "People listened because they knew who you were." Keanu considered this. Maybe. But remember what actually changed things? It wasn't me. It was when everyone else started showing up, when what was happening in darkness became visible. He gestured to the path behind them where the confrontation had occurred. Fame just speeds up the process sometimes. They approached the eastern gate of the park, where streetlights created pools of yellow light on the sidewalk. The city beyond felt safer now, the earlier threat diminished by distance and resolution. "You know your video will be everywhere by morning," Sarah said. "Are you okay with that?" Keanu shrugged. "If it helps someone else stop next time instead of walking by, then yes." A police car cruised slowly past the park entrance, likely called by one of the onlookers during the confrontation. The officer inside nodded respectfully at Keanu, who returned the gesture. "My apartment is just up this block," Sarah said, pointing to a building of modest brownstones. "I can make it from here." "Are you sure?" His concern remained genuine. Celebrity status forgotten in the simple human exchange of ensuring safety. Sarah nodded, feeling a strange mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. "I'm sure. Thank you again, not just for walking me home, but for what you said back there. About choices." Keanu smiled, not the practiced smile of press photos, but something more genuine. We all have power in the choices we make, even when it doesn't feel like it. He paused, then added, "Get home safe." With a small wave, he turned and continued down the street, soon disappearing around a corner. Just a man out for an evening walk, momentarily returned to anonymity. Sarah watched him go, then climbed the steps to her building. By the time she reached her apartment door, her phone was already buzzing with notifications. Friends sending links to Twitter posts and TikTok videos. Keanu Reeves stops harassment in Jefferson Park. The story was spreading, transforming with each retelling. She sat on her couch scrolling through the clips. Some focused on the celebrity aspect, others on the confrontation itself. But the most widely shared was a simple 20-second video capturing Keanu's quiet words. "There aren't sides here. Just people trying to figure out the right thing to do." Outside her window, the city continued its nighttime rhythm, unchanged yet somehow different. In parks and streets across the metropolis, similar scenes played out without celebrity intervention or viral documentation. But perhaps, Sarah thought as she set her phone aside, tomorrow one more person might choose to stop instead of walk past. One more person might speak instead of remain silent. And in a world of small choices, that was something. Wow, what a story! If this moved you, imagine what else we have for you. Hit that like button, drop a comment, and let us know what you think. You'll help us grow if you'll subscribe and get notifications on. And don't stop here. Click one of the videos on your screen and keep the journey going. See you in the next one.